For those who do not know me, I'm Marwan Abouljoud, and I'm the division head for transplant surgery and director of the Transplant Institute. A privilege indeed. Now, the reason why I selected this topic, besides the fact that we all work in teams, and this is the model for transplant, but we more recently had a Kaizen kickoff, as many of you participated in. I know we focused on the pre-kidney team and the pre-liver team, and we're going to be expanding that. But the model of Kaizen within the lean process improvement engages people in dialogue and conversations at yet another level of teamwork. And it's not just teamwork in the sense of selection committee or liver team or kidney team, but now you're going to be opening up the subject of something that's not working or something that can be made better. And it's going to stress the system to where you want to express your ideas in a certain way that is non-judgmental and more process-focused, and somehow in the discussion makes things better at the end. Better for the patient, better for the team, and you feeling better about the contribution and not being necessarily, say, chastised or intimidated by the expression of an opinion, or how you feel about an opinion, or how you feel how somebody reacted to an opinion. And to the extent that you're able to do that really is where the chemistry of teams and the efficacy of teams starts happening. And so this is the topic of the discussion, and it'll be quite personal. So some of them are my personal perspective, some of it may have science in it. And so take it as you will. And so you will develop enough field that you can express your emotions, and I can take it well. So a little story on the tug of war. Athletics was always fun for me, and I was a track and field guy and a swimmer. And I joined this international college, which was an English-speaking school, but I was French educated. And everybody warned me that the French section is a very small section of this big behemoth. It was the biggest school in Lebanon. So we were only 2 classes, and it turns out all the French kids were quite nerdy, you know, high grades, high performance. Nobody was on the track, and I was all by myself. And the English section had 7 classes. 7 classes. So they told me about this something called field day, which was in April every year, and we would compete against the English section. And I kept telling the guys, how can that be? We're all nerdy, we're only 2 sections, and these guys have 7 sections. They're all like bodybuilders and muscle in this. So I went on the systematic thing year by year, understanding what every class had to offer. Do you run? Do you jump? You look like you got good legs. So over 2 years, we actually were pretty close to almost tying those English guys. And then I finally figured out that this is not going to work on one-on-one. Somebody was telling me about this tug of war. I never understood what that meant. What it turned out to be is just pulling that rope. So then I said, let me collect the team. So we went and got the team together, and everybody was on their own. And I said, you know, if we figure out how to pull rope together, we're all skinny, we can pull these English guys, and then we will get 6 or 7 medals. And we needed 4 more medals to win the banner, the high school banner. So we went and studied how the English guys practiced. And then we practiced in such a way that we pulled at a higher frequency when they released. And by coordinating together when we would pull and how we would pull, believe it or not, we were even at the end of the track and field in high school until the tug of war came in and all these little slinky guys came in. It was less than 10 seconds. We wiped the English section and we won the high school banner. And then this was the first time where the classes together realized that tug of war, it sounds easy, but it's not. But what it was an example of team coordination and team activity. And you start appreciating that the athletics team is not about collecting medals one by one, but more like really acting together in unison. And that nice synchrony, it's almost like when they say, if you all pound your feet together at the same time, you may crack the floor. But please don't do that. But the reality is that coordination is important. Now, in the stresses of transplant and decisions and conflicts and things, I always try to emphasize to people, please work your state of mind. Always have a state of mind. Minds, mindset, beliefs, and attitudes are all at play with how you act and how you speak all day. So that's really most of the time my state of mind. And you guys don't believe it, but it's true. Whenever somebody comes in and has a dizzy, within 5 minutes, I'm there. So you're not going to mess it up for me. However, the days sometimes are like this. And so one has to understand that it's not always like that. But when you understand and appreciate that this is the circumstance you are in, then you need to figure out how to manage it, and how to manage how you feel about it, and how to manage how you're going to act about it. And that awareness that you're going to shift from one mindset to the other, and it's an act of will and choice, not a happenstance and a coincidence, that you understand the conduct and the management of a team. And that's a choice. It's a sense of awareness and a choice of how would one want to act in a team, and how would one to speak to an issue within the team. And I may have used this slide before, but the journey in the forest is always such a nice metaphor for me. And the reason for that is because you're always going to find surprises, but you will also find pleasant surprises, not just bad surprises. There is always rays of light, so you always can maintain a level of optimism. And you're always going to go on paths that have been set by somebody before you, but you also forge new paths that other people would follow. So this is what I call the passing the baton in track and field. You know, somebody got to start, somebody got to follow, and somebody has to have the baton passed to the other. And that's really part of the role in the team. So that's why when people change their role in the team to another role, there is a certain responsibility there where you pass on the baton to another one. We call it onboarding sometimes, and we call it, you know, sign off sometimes. That whole practice in the team is very critical. So I would start with a story of the two wolves. Anybody familiar with the story of the two wolves? This is actually quite an interesting story that I picked up from some reading a while ago. So there is a story of a Cherokee leader who's sitting with his grandchildren, and he says to them, in every life there is a terrible fight, a fight between two wolves. One is evil, he's fear, anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, and deceit. And the other is good, joy, serenity, humility, confidence, and generosity, truth, gentleness, and compassion. So one of the grandchildren asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The elder replies, "The one you feed." And again, this is really a matter of choice. What part of you do you feed in the team is the part that's going to do fine. And that's really a critical component, because how you act within the team, how you feel within a team, and what emotions that team elicits in you, and how you react to that, it really defines the dynamic of the team, success or failure of the team, and as a matter of fact, your happiness or unhappiness as well. Your happiness or unhappiness is not a happenstance, it's a choice as well that you make. And it is contagious. So this is a very cute one, isn't it? So what the world needs is a group hug, right? One of the more fundamental pieces based on my reflections in the 20 years that I've been here, and I always say I burned 9 fingers, I got 1 left, I can't even burn more fingers. And this is, you know, learning the hard way of what really matters. And probably the first thing that I can say matters is the interest in people in leading a team. And if you don't have an interest in people, you got a big challenge. Because the whole idea is that you want to humanize the whole interaction. You know, you're interacting with people, you're making an experience, a positive experience for all if possible, or you're dealing with a challenge and turning it into optimistic scenarios for all. The more you humanize the experience, the more you're able to see the joy, you're able to see the pain. And not uncommonly, actually, the actions that you see or the facial expressions that you see, somebody else has got a real life too. And perhaps one should seek to understand what is the other possibility, versus the only possibility being what you see on the surface. So that, I think, is one of the more fundamental pieces of being in a team and leading a team. The other one is connecting, figuring out how to connect with people. And when you're connecting, you're creating a style where you're able to communicate effectively, politely, reasonably, understandably, and what are other attributes that make other people perk their ears and listen and accept what you're communicating with them. And so therefore, there is a relational element to this connectedness to build the team. The team is not just a group of people who are going to sit there because they were asked to sit there. That will not happen. General teams, what they do is when they first start, they assess each other, they weigh each other, then they're doubtful, what is this guy? They project a little bit, and then, you know, they look like they don't know what they're doing, they look they don't get it, and they've done this in the past, and Well, that really is a failure from the start. And the ability to be able to connect and relate is quite fundamental to that piece, and communicating. And in that communication can be facial expression, tone and timbre, choice of words, not interrupting, and on and on. Everything your mother has told you still works. And using of emails and text messages as well. We all know the stories with text messages, whether they're effective or not. Capital letters, italic letters, underlined, red, that looks sometimes like a murder notice or a criminal notice of some sort, because somebody's spewing their anger on an email, or bolding their letters, or using 5 paragraphs to convey something that could have been said with 1 sentence or a quick phone call. So that is the hard wiring of a group and a team. Having the courage to make a decision. I was always it could be, maybe, and perhaps, I do that a lot, in deference to other people. But the reality is sometimes we're going to make decisions, and you're going to own up to the decision. And if you don't own up to the decisions, you don't learn from your mistakes. And yes, mistakes will happen, but yes, you have to get up and learn from your mistakes. I don't say it's bad not to make mistakes. It's bad not to learn from mistakes. And that's really a fundamental approach here. And I think that I put here the operating room, but there is many venues. Surgeons, when we graduate from fellowship, probably the first thing we encounter, the first thing, you make a decision in the operating room. You're clamping big vessels, that attending is no longer there. You're it. You reperfuse. Something's going to happen. Person can die. They can bleed to death. You got to deal with it. Liver is not working. You got to deal with it. You got to make decisions. So there is infinitesimal number of decisions one has to arrive at. And one has to be able to make the decision and walk. Next one, make a decision and walk. And that applies to every one of us. Not just the director of a program. A nurse makes a decision. She calls the code, and diagnoses a reaction to a drug, and so on. Deals with a difficult family. So making the decisions. Now, when you make decisions, you get empowered, okay? I clamped, took a liver out, saved the life, and then you come back at the operating room, you're a hero. You're invincible. Well, you get a headache if your brain expands too much in that cavity. So you're going to have some humility. You cannot go past. And the issue of humility is that no matter how high you go, there is still sometimes a fall. And you hope that there is somebody to help you stand back up again, or somebody you can lean on. To the extent that you're humble and have that humility built into you, you accept that, and you accept to reach out. It's okay to reach out. So the higher the elevation, the bigger the drop. So one has to always remember to stay anchored in the management of a team and leading the team. Staying anchored is critical, and not be disillusioned. This was one of my favorite slides, actually, because we have it throughout the house. We have them in chimpanzees, and we have them in little characters, and we put them in the house because we always tell the kids, don't go telling, and don't go doing this, and don't use that. But it really is very critical, because as teams get challenged and there is a lot of emotions, people start rumor mills, say things they shouldn't be saying, project things, allow themselves to listen into conversations they no need to listen into, and that builds a certain feeling. So keeping to oneself with these little principles of hearing no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil, as fundamental as it sounds, is really one of the more fundamental pieces of human relations and dynamics, and it still holds true. I was in Chicago, and I saw these guys, the Blue Angels, in action about 15 years ago. It was stunning. So I went back and got one of those slides, mostly to express that doing your best is really not an option. It's really the way things ought to be. And obviously all of us, and I would say, do that willingly, and sometimes we may not do it the best way, but this is where a little bit of introspection and says, you know what, this was not my best. I didn't give my best today. I need to do better, or a near miss event happened. I need to fix that, make it better. Or why is the rejection rate of 10% okay? Why is not 5 okay? And so on and so forth. So always thinking of what is our best and how can it be continuously upgraded and advanced is always a state of mind one needs to be in. The reason for that is because the best is not defined yet, and also our patients, transplant, donors, finance, and quality as a continuous event. There's a lot at stake, and it's a continuous event. So that's why when we think of ideas of improvement, one should never settle. Settling and saying we've arrived, I think it's where your backsliding begins. And so always thinking of a new framework and freshening up your new ideas. Now, doing your best can happen individually, but ideally, it's best as a team. And I use the example of mountain climbing here because truly it feels like hard work. When we go in and say, let's do Kaizen, now all of a sudden we got 15 projects, 20 ideas in action. That is hard work. Nobody will ever claim being excellent at what you do is going to be easy work. But at the same time, the reality is when you get there and you achieve and accomplish as a team, the sense of reward becomes contagious and repeats itself. And the outcome of that, whether it's towards patients or the enterprise that you are part of, really makes it all the more valuable for you. Nobody has a problem with that, right? Managing conflict, right? We're all good. This is part of human life. And I think that the teams that are well functioning should not be going in every day, life is rosy. If life is rosy every day, that means we're not being very honest with each other. We're not raising the issues that we differ on. So sometimes conflict will arise. I'm not saying it's right to have a conflict, but there will be conflict. Sometimes you project your personal values into a discussion about a patient when actually it's not about my personal value. It's about what the group thinks is right and wrong, or what the regulatory system says, this is how things ought to be done. And these are the inner conflicts that we get sometimes that need to surface and need to be resolved, because if they're not resolved, you're always at odds and feel like you don't belong or we're doing the wrong thing. And if it comes up and it's not addressed and resolved, then you have an unhealthy team dynamics. Then your team dynamics are very unhealthy, because then people will be chastised or cannot speak or they are disruptive. So there are ways to bring conflict. But one of the features we all have to have is figure out how to reconcile conflict, how to manage conflict, and how, as I call it, piece it back together. Okay? And as a matter of fact, we had some time ago a major conflict where our selection committee in the liver group is typically a consensus decision making. And actually, it was very tense. So we had to spend an hour and a half or 2 hours, I think, and you moderated that session because we needed to handle the conflict. We cannot ignore the conflict. It's fundamentally rooted in justifiable reasons of why it did come up. And therefore, it needs to be managed and then handled accordingly. And then the capacity to imagine. I tell you, the discussion, when it's healthy within a team, is always the good soil to imagining new possibilities. So, and that can only be in the context of open communication, people able to speak up freely, think out loudly of something we've never thought about. Talking about it out of context sometimes makes it fresh, or engaging consultants from different specialties who come in and have a fresh take on the whole idea. And they say, guys, you've been doing this for 10 years this way, but we've been doing this way in another business line or specialty. Have you thought about that? Or when you're taking the long ride home instead of the short ride home, and you're battling with some ideas, imagine the possibilities. And the key anchor here is optimism, out of the box. Optimism out of the box. Because every time we get challenged with a problem, chances are, if you're geared with imaginatory mindset, as well as optimism, you're going to come up with amazing solutions. Because amazing solutions don't come from plenty. Has anybody been in dire needs when they have everything they could get? No. But when you don't have everything you could get, somehow your creative juices come up, whether it's financial, or it's efficiency, or it's personal, and what have you. So imagining the possibility and thinking out of the box is an amazing motivator to stay optimistic about the work that we do as a team. Now, whether it's high you're aiming or you're down in the doldrums, you can never lose sight of the big picture. The big picture is that we all do amazing work. We save lives. We make a difference in communities and patients. We are an amazing team that works well together, and we lean on each other, and we're a successful program, but we have work to do. The big picture is I'm a living human being. I'm at peace with myself, I have a great family, and I go home at the end of the day. And I'm going to have dinner as if nothing happened. Whoever has the bad day gets to tell a story, and so on and so forth. The big picture. As they say, life is not a rehearsal. Ultimately, we're going to check. You don't get to do it again. You keep the big picture in mind. So keeping the big picture, whether it's at work organizationally, or with the nature of the work we do, or when we go home and go back and say, ultimately, you can go as far as you want, but as you're going to go back, helps you kind of put things in a perspective. You know, why are you just going about it this way? Why do you look like you're going to stroke just for disagreeing on one thing? So within the context of a team, keeping the big picture, what are we trying to do? What are we trying to go? I think helps simplify certain things and elevate the level of the conversation. And for you to be able to do that, I think you always have to have the capacity for self-analysis and introspection and reflecting, whether reflecting on the things you do, or been done to you, or said, or been said to you, or how you acted in a certain way, that, you know what, today I managed to step on 3 people and cracked 1 neck. Well, that's not good. That was not a good day. Today, I advanced 3 people, and I made them succeed at the work that they do. Well, that's really meaningful. Today, I made a difference in the life of 10 people, 3 patients, 7 family members, and they are better at the end of the day than the day started, and that's all because of me and my team. That was an amazing day. So therefore, if you do not spend at the end of the day a little bit of reflection, or at the end of a week, where you get the sense where you say, you know what, maybe I was not that kind of person that I thought I ought to be, and I want to be, or maybe I did such an amazing thing, I should reward myself, tap myself on the back, because that was really meaningful work. And for some reason, I thought that all the money you make over life and the gadgets you acquire that will make meaning, but it may turn out over time, it's a difference you make in the life of others, patients, and your partners and your teams. So as time goes by, self-reflection and self-analysis and reflection may wind up telling you, be mindful and pay attention to the things that count ultimately for you. And I think that's a very important piece that I find myself on a daily basis, a good way to re-anchor and reframe. So what about this whole leading the team business? Who leads the team here? By a show of hand, who leads the team? Yeah. Who have children here? Yep. You know, everybody is a team leader, one way or another. You could be on rounds. You could be doing a patient check-in. You could be doing an evaluation. You could be running a selection meeting. You could be doing a research team discussion. You could be doing review labs. You could be a quality improvement champion. All of us have to lead a team at some point. And sometimes you rotate the champions, you rotate the leaders in the team. So really, leadership of a team is a shared responsibility. It's not a one person. It's just one person tries to set the tone or maybe help set a vision. The best leader of a team is a facilitator that helps the team itself contribute to that shared accountability and shared responsibility. Anybody felt like this sometimes? Smoke coming out of your ears? Well, that really is one of the most derailing motions or actions or thoughts that gets to people where you're angry. And most thoughts that come into us from things that happen to us or happen around our environment that make us derail. This is what they call it, the amygdala hijack or emotional hijack in the emotional intelligence language, where all your emotional sensory responses are rooted. And so this is what people, experience, and there are those derailers, and in some study, accounted for over 60 to 70% of jobs losses in senior management. Those type of derailers, the emotional derailers. So for every minute you remain angry, you just gave up 60 seconds of peace of mind. How obvious is that? And many of you, have read Ralph Waldo Emerson, but I admire a lot of his writings as I kind of catch up with American literature. But the reality is, peace of mind is an important state to be in. It doesn't mean you don't disagree. That's a different story. I can disagree, but I need to have a peace of mind. So emotions are important, and they're very important because they're contagious. they're more contagious than anything else. So that's why when people are low down and have bad morale or are angry because they've been mistreated or disrespected, it spreads like wildfire. Therefore, these type of emotions in the context of a team need to be handled and need to be managed. The first fundamental piece of emotions begins with self. And the self-awareness piece is really the most critical one because many people don't realize what they look like, how do they come across, and actually what they want to be. So that awareness is something that people a lot of times have to develop because they don't stop and ask themselves, how did I come across, or why am I feeling so angry, but I want to be peaceful? Why am I jealous, but I really shouldn't be? My value system says I shouldn't be. Why am I doing this or feeling this way, but my value system tells me this? This is your actual feeling, thinking. This is your ideal person. And a lot of us have an ideal person in us. That ideal person tells you, be nice, be thoughtful, be polite. Then you start thinking, he says, why am I wanting to do this? Quite often, many of us think that we process things in a certain way, and the first thing we do is react. That reaction time, when it's 1/100th of a second, is quite nasty and will derail. Because we have not allowed it to go into the meat processor, the idea processor, where it gets compared to your own value system and see if it matches or not, and whether it needs to be managed or not, or how it will be seen by the other person. Because you want to anticipate how others will see you. When I say somebody, you know, you wear your colors, they don't get it. Say, I can see you're angry. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Your facial expression, your body language, your color and your tone, and the timbre of your voice, and you wink and blink and do this, and you jitter, and then you live like that. So people don't realize that a lot of times their body language will reflect how they're feeling because they have not been able to process that. And this slow motion coming in your head, getting in your mind, sitting in and doing something, you say, stop right there. I don't want you. I know you're there, but I'm going to control you because I don't like that. I just don't like that. If you do it fast, it's out there. You have to figure out how that happens. That then trickles into self-management. Has any one of you kind of heard something in a conversation and the word come out and say, no, don't come back, oh, come back, come back. You can't pull your words back in. It's been said, it's been done. This is like when your wife asks you, does this dress make me look fat? It's a trick question, okay? But the moment you answer honestly, you have to process it differently. I'm using it as a very light thing, but to me, self-control is quite fundamental to the self-awareness piece because we all are working in social contexts, in team frameworks, where how you are managing, conducting yourself is a reflection on you and the organization you work with, and people will be judging you all the time by your actions. And in reality, our actions, whether it's right or wrong, are interpreted as our beliefs and who we stand for. So there is no dissociation that I didn't mean it, unintentional. No, the pattern of actions are really what's going to tell about you. But at the same time, while being adaptable in the way you act and you react, one has to be framed with optimism. And so perhaps one of our self-management, self-control is always trying to build on the optimistic side of that equation. When we are trying to, within a group, individually, to handle our emotions and then manage them appropriately, we need to be aware of the social context we're in. Have you ever gone to a meeting or somewhere where you walk in the room, when you walk in the room, and then there is a somber feeling in the room, like somebody just died? Oh, thank you. Yeah, where somebody just died. Well, this is not the time to announce a birthday party, okay? So having the sense of awareness of where you are socially and develop that empathic feeling that you will connect and resonate with the feelings of that room and the feelings of that group, that would denote respect. You will relate to those feelings. It will permit you to listen to people's opinion because you have a sense of empathy to the group. You understand and appreciate opinions and feelings. And you also seek to understand where they're coming from and what they are, and also connect with the moods and the cues given in that room. So therefore, in the context of socially aware in teams, when we are going in, this is where we regulate our behavior. Because if you regulate behavior and develop the sense of awareness, you may choose to say, I sense something in the room here and people are unhappy. Did I miss something? Do we need to discuss something as a group? Somebody may act, Jackie, do you have something to share with the group? Please do, because we all like to understand what is happening. You create a safe platform for that discussion. But when you think of teams, a lot of times people cluster as teams to gripe about the organization. Well, that's not the idea. The idea is that organization is the macro team, and our team needs to connect with the organization to understand that some of the actions that occur in the organization are not out of malice. Understand the situational awareness is an organizational awareness to where we say, you know what, the system is going through some tough situations because the economy in Detroit is XYZ, and therefore this is going to trickle this, and this is tough. Understood. But it's not against me, it's not against you. It's an organizational situation that will need to be handled because all of us would rather have a floating ship rather than be bailing water because we got problem with the boat. The last component of this quadrangle is the relationship management. And this is where I always say we all have to invest in the relationships within a team and among ourselves. And that top relationship is that of influence. You know, this is why I hate organizational chart. Who reports to who who has authority over who? Well, as Chief Medical Officer, which is my title, I don't know what it means, but I just do what I'm told. And when I look at the org chart, there is nobody reporting to me. So I'm going to change it to Chief Influence Officer, because you have to go in kindness, in appreciation, and ask for people to do things they don't want to do, and you have to figure out with less resources how they're going to get them done. If we all act in a way that we actually, our target is to influence and not manipulate, let's not confuse both. Influencing is trying to present to people cogent discussions about what needs to be done and how you can do that as a team. And then within the relationships, you also have to play the role of development with others. So more senior people help more. The champions of lean will help others. And then those who become leaders in lean then helps others. Those who have been onboarded with critical, task X then help others. Those who have done research for 15 years mentor the new ones. Surgeons who are experienced bring in the new ones and they scrub with them. This is our job. This is not an option. This is how teams work. You develop others and you build the team. And there's always going to be conflict. But like I said, your job is to piece it together as part of being in the team. Not to say there was a conflict, build it up and leave the room and then say, done at XYZ. No, job is not done. And then when you accomplish all these components, then this is when change will happen. This is when you become a change catalyst. And the reality is, who can say we don't have change? We have change every day, whether it's payer, whether it's ICD-10, whether it's lean. So we have to become the change catalyst ourselves. So Jeff Immelt, who's a very smart guy, who was really underrated when he became CEO of GE, says that you lead today by building teams and placing others first, and it's not really about you. And he leads one of the biggest organizations, publicly traded organizations, and it turns out that under him, they've done way better than previous leadership, and because of his high emphasis on building teams, flattening some of the structures, but also building with that, clarity and accountability. So when we think of how we get there as individuals now to step into the team, because that framework was an individual framework, how do you transition it up into the team? Well, it starts really with your mindset as a person. How you think. How do you think yourself? How do you frame your mind? Are you always an optimist and your mindset is that of optimism? or your mindset is, oh, we did well today, well, that was sheer luck because I always do bad. Oh, I got a good score today. I'm surprised because I always score bad. A teacher gave you a hug and said, good job. What's she up to? Teachers hate me. That mindset frames a lot of your attitudes and beliefs. And when it relates to the attitude, it's really all in the attitude. If you come with a positive attitude during the day, you're not going to let things take you down, nor will you let yourself be contagious. So bringing in the right attitude through your mindset is going to wind up feeding into your beliefs. And your beliefs on a day-to-day are shaped by those experiences. We have coffee together. We discuss patients together. We have a little conflict. We chat it out. We resolve it. We find a solution that elevates both of us. These are the experiences that define what your beliefs are. And the beliefs shape your actions. Okay? So when we say we're a team and we aim high and we act that way every day, the action that will come out of that is accountability and delivering good results. Because if you don't believe in that, which came from your mindset and attitudes, you don't get it to the results that you want to get. So in that results pyramid, we always say experiences shape your beliefs, which will formulate your actions, which will deliver your results. And that's where results in and of themselves can deliver. There are technical ways to get results, but for sustainability, you got to begin with your experiences, which are tied to your beliefs. Think of it as a tabletop, four legs. Those legs are the experiences and the beliefs are on top of that, and the actions built on that tabletop. So, a mindful approach to transition into that state, I always say, always approaching it with a beginner's mind. I'm curious, help me understand, versus what the hell was that? That was stupid. Seen that before, that doesn't work, that's a bunch of baloney. No, I'm curious, help me understand. Making impartial observations that look at the process to try to understand the process and how people arrive at that, not describing emotions. Having self-compassion to oneself, which we all do in healthcare very poorly, because we beat ourselves for a bad outcome, we beat ourselves for something that happens. Fine, let's take it, then let go, and then build to the next step and realize that we do good work by patients and our intent is good. Being present and aware, as I always say, aware, awake, and attuned. How many people go to a meeting and feel that they're awake, aware, and attuned with the team? By show of hands. A lot of us disconnect. Some of us are we go in and out of states, right? We get a text message, then you're thinking about a problem. Sometimes somebody gets angry, it says something, their face is red, we go back to your text message. Then you think, wait a minute, why would that person red? It created something in them. Should we let it surface, or we're too in a hurry? Being awake and aware and attuned will allow you to get those emotions out of the team. So this jumps us from the individual emotional intelligence domain to the group emotional intelligence domain. And the transition is made through you by having these mindful practices of thinking of all these components. And the effectiveness in organization has been clearly proven to tie into emotional intelligence of groups as much as it does with the IQ of individuals. So it's not enough to be technically good. Effectiveness of team, set clear goals, have the right leader, make people accountable. Well, yeah, that's all easy stuff. The hard stuff is how to make people move and want to own up to that and work together as one piece. Now that's the way the heavy lifting comes in. So there are three conditions for groups to be effective. We say it's trust, an element of trust within the team members and the group members, having a sense of identity, which Transplant is always one of the paramount groups that actually do develop an identity by the nature of the work that we do, and also have a sense of efficacy that we can get the job done, and the results are good, and we're able to do something that we can measure, and we're all mutually accountable for. Now, the environment that is very permissive to the three components is an environment where the emotions are well handled, because a hidden conflict will make the team go down. So the context in which you want to have emotions handled allows for norms that support the awareness and the regulations of the emotions, both inside the group and outside the group. Our group is liver, The other group is cardiology. I need them to do the pre-transplant clearance for me. I need infectious disease. I need the lab. So the dynamic of the success of a team is not only within as a group intelligence piece, it is also how you interact with the other teams and how you attend to the other teams. The EI norms that you build are the foundation where you collaborate. Because really the glue and the connectivity you create between your team and the team, other teams, or within your team, is that ability to work together towards a common goal. So bringing emotions in the team needs to be deliberate and needs to allow them to surface. And that's the most uncomfortable thing teams deal with, is letting people express, you know, what you just said made me feel. Made me feel what? Made me feel upset, disrespected, made me question the values we have towards patients. We spoke in a certain way that was derogatory, that makes me uncomfortable to speak this way about my patient, a patient in the team context. We used foul language, it was disrespectful, made me feel uncomfortable in this environment. This is the stuff that people will bring to the surface because it helps you set the norms of the team. It doesn't have to be confrontational, abrasive, but it has to be brought up. And then you behave in a way that builds relationships, again, within the team and outside the team. Now, the norms that create this awareness of those feelings are begin with the interpersonal understanding, how we both understand each other, know each other. When you walk in the room, everybody's doing okay, somebody acts different. Jackie, anything you want to share with us today? A patient passed away, we pass the note around, or we have something to celebrate. It's a celebratory day because we hit this, somebody had a birthday, somebody had a baby. Allowing yourself to check in and avoiding these negative attributions that are unnecessary because they're not tied to process, they're tied to judgment. And also taking perspectives, and I think that many of us do that, which is classically stated as, are there any perspectives that we haven't heard on the decision we made today? I'm sensing there is some silence. We did not have the usual discussion we usually get. Somebody disagrees? Do you want to speak up and say something? So allowing an opportunity for people to surface in a way that they provide their own perspective in the team is where you help set some of these norms. Another norm is having a process of self-evaluation and feedback within the team. If you arrived at a decision that didn't sound right, you stop, guys, did we do the right thing? I have a sense we had a group thing going on and I'm not sure everyone expressed their opinion. I'd say you're a devil's advocate. Can you weigh in on this? Did we do this right? I'm okay with devil's advocate sometimes. So actually having somebody check in and say, guys, I know we all agreed, but I'm going to give you a different perspective here. And I'm not really sure we weighed in all the options. So you allow that to come up because you have what they call a process check. Also understanding your cross-boundary relationships, whether it's with another team or within the organization, because you're not an effective team if you're hated by every other team or if you're envied by every other team. So the dynamics within the team kind of radiate outwards, and you have to develop those connectivities to those other teams so the collective is able to accomplish way more than an individual team can. And that's why one has to be mindful of how you interact with the other team. So your choice would be cardiology said, anesthesia said, or I spoke with John, who's a cardiologist, and he said X, Y, Z, and they have a concern about this, and we need to set a protocol together to review this. So that went from the depersonalized to the personalized, to a dialogue instead of criticism, and then building a bridge rather than breaking a bridge by judgment and negative attitudes. And then the norms that we all accept, and we practice them, I think, fairly well, is while we are confronting, we do not want to have disruptive behavior. You know, we used to always, you know, joke about it. As a matter of fact, sometimes in the old days, we used to grab a piece of paper and throw it at somebody, or jokingly say to somebody, boy, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. So sometimes groups have simple statements and actions and ways of telling people, you know what, you've gone on the wrong path here. We don't need to do it that way. Let's do course correction, and let's reinforce the good behavior that allows an open opinion without people being chastised or ostracized in the group. And having the caring attitude where if somebody had illness, if somebody has had a bad outcome, you know, you look like you had a bad day today. Yes, my patient died on the table. Having conversation, you always do good work. You know, you shouldn't take it personal. Let's go out for coffee afterwards. We can talk about it. Having that caring attitude that either speaks to the people, allows them to speak up, and is never demeaning, is really what creates a certain norm that allows you to regulate emotions within the group. Now, another approaches include creating ways that you can work with emotions, and typically most of the time it's a platform where people are able to speak up, although sometimes there are ways to recognize a positive emotion where people cheer and clap, or whether it's a negative emotion where somebody always declares, well, such and such is unhappy today, everybody watch out, everybody laughs, it's a funny thing, you break the ice and then you move on. But it has to be built within the dynamic of the group. Creating an affirmative process and an environment is essentially really being positive and what I call the appreciative inquiry approach. When somebody brings up a good idea, you say, you know what, that was a good idea, John. You didn't think about that. Thank you for adding this idea. This is what we need in this group. And although many people say good ideas and they know they did, building on that in an appreciative way, affirmative way, actually makes people feel good about their contribution to the team. Conscious efforts to build the team spirit is something we do all the time, and being very proactive in how you solve problems. This is when problems arise, instead of dunking it, you actually take it on. Actually, you come up with it even. You identify things coming down the pike, because the last thing you want to be is be reactive to the problem, but rather you'll be proactive about the problem because it's an opportunity to do something better. So if we say, you know what, guys, MEL 35 is coming, we're going to have sicker patients, well, we need to figure out now how to manage our list so that these patients are processed faster to get listed and transplanted faster. That's a proactive approach to through putting high MELT patients to get transplanted faster because we know the change is coming. So that kind of framework for the group. So all in all, really, the work of teams is really about the people. And I know that a lot of us have ignored our behavioral sciences in undergrad and tried to speed up through medical school, nursing school. But really, the people equation is what makes teams fail and what teams succeed. And if you look at programs around the country that have had steady success, it's because they figured out the human dynamic, how to nurture people, grow people, advance people, and maintain healthy norms and healthy behaviors. And the transplant centers that have not done that, and Pittsburgh comes to mind, they've fallen from grace. And yet they were the pioneers of transplantation in the world. Now you don't hear the Pittsburgh word being mentioned very much because they have not really cared for the people equation. So the people equation is really the glue and the magic and the secret sauce that really makes a team and a transplant program work. And again, I would have another quote: what lies behind us and what lies before us are but small matters compared to what lies within us. And I think that every day, while we're doing what we're doing, we're really projecting. We are projecting what's in us to the outside world and the behaviors and experiences that I just talked about earlier. And I think with this, I have left a few minutes, and I hope I did not rush through this too fast because I came running over here, and will entertain any questions that the group may have. Thank you. And please don't take me to these measures. I'm still a student of learned behaviors. So I'm practicing still.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're talking about group emotional intelligence, and you have a situation that comes up. Your slides kind of indicate that we should address it right there. But sometimes that's not the best setting to address if someone's having emotional, intelligence, bothered by something. Sometimes that's not the best. This is a new culture for us.
Yes.
To address it. So how would you?
That is very true. Actually, one of the things that my experience has been, and I think it's true in groups, is depends on the platform and the construct of the group. There are things the group can handle, and there are things that the group needs to process differently and develop the capacity to handle. And that's why when there are disagreements that we thought were fractious and fundamental, we thought it's always better to spend more time to deliberate about that in a different setting, and perhaps first have in a smaller group and then go back and take it to the larger group. One, I should always remember that when you're doing a selection committee meeting, you do not want to take the time allotted to patient care and screening. So there is a fine balance between what you would want to handle in the same context or by the same group or subset of that group in a different context. So that becomes a matter of context. And I think the one scenario that we've had that was a challenge, and we've had since few situations that we had to deal with, but they were taken in a different context, so the business at hand gets, dealt with, but somebody has to verbalize, and that typically is one of the leaders in the team that says, I do acknowledge, I do agree there is a difference, I respect the difference of opinion. It does not appear to be the best forum for us to discuss this due to limitations of time to give it the due process. When we move with the task at hand, and I would like us to take us up again as a team in a different setting, and maybe you want to weigh in on that. You have a good understanding of that dimension. Any thoughts on that piece?
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. So acknowledging it and moving it to a different context is actually a positive behavior in the sense of a group dynamic. And that people would say, you know what, I'm not being ignored. That doesn't mean you never take it up again. You gotta follow through. You gotta follow through. Otherwise, what you did was hush. And I think hush is just not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. And I know sometimes unintentionally people, when there is some action in a group, people want to hush to just get moving. When small number of the times that conversation that's happening is not social chatter, is actually a real issue is there, and there's a concern. And then so parallel to hush, maybe one would want to say, is there something we need to take up in the group? If not, let's go back and focus on the patient at hand or the situation at hand. This way you don't hush, but you also express that if somebody wants to discuss something in the group and that's distracting from you presenting a patient, they can express that to the group. This is how I talk to my children every day. No, I'm just I'm trying. Any other questions? A lot of that actually, interesting, for those who grew up in big families, will make you reflect a lot on how you grew up with competing for resources, i.e. that last piece of pizza, or the keys to the car, or the window seat, when there's only 2 windows. So you figure out some of these things there. But I have to say, though, that although I'm reflecting in the first part of the presentation on my experience here, and the latter part, I don't want it to make sound too preachy, but a lot of these thoughts actually we live every day and are in action with our teams here. We have, I think, an amazing level of team intelligence, group behavior. We have a very high level of respect and mutual accountability and admiration. I think it's a very healthy environment we're in, but at the same time, I always say it's good to always go back to a certain framework because we will be challenged. We're humans. And I think as time goes by, whether it's financial challenges, the healthcare reform, and the imperative for quality and doing better at the reduced cost, which is what we call the value equation, will be challenging us a little bit. And sometimes we may wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And then with all the stuff on top of you, you just will tend to react. And this is where you just kind of dial it down a little bit, go slow-mo, put your thoughts that are not what you want them to be. And so this way you do not act in ways that you do not think you would want to be seen under the different circumstances, and then you process it. And I think that you realize that other people in the team can be a resource for you rather than sheltering and then letting things stew in your mind, and then having this what we call the negative cycle of rumination in your head that kind of builds itself, and then you find your heart rate going up. And if it's the caffeine, no, it's your bad thoughts. You're letting them go astray, okay? Decaf won't help you here. So what happens is you just have to figure out how to just slow it down, take it down a few notches, and really process it, and project it back on the basis of the value system you see of yourself. And a lot of times what I tell people is, periodically one would want to go through certain exercises. One, we talked about the reflection. Who did I help today? And who did I step on today? You know, the next one would be, how did I present myself today? And how do I want to be perceived today? Because they may be different things. And then another one would be, what is really my reason for success in this workplace? Is it, you know, a clerk that helps? Or is it a nurse that helps? Or is it an NP that helps? Is it your executive assistant that helps? That becomes what I call the personal board of directors in a successful enterprise. And each one of us leads an enterprise. That could be family at home, could be at work. Who are the people who really made it happen for you? The moment you start jotting these names down and put faces on them, all of a sudden these people change. They're no longer that person. They're humanized. They have a value in your structure, a value in your day, and a value in your life. And then you start looking at people very differently. You no longer judge and project. So having that mental effort and exercise of defining who are the people who got you there and helped you be there and successful every day. And then the last one is really on the issue of behavior is, who do you perceive and want yourself to be, and who you currently are, and who's going to help you do that. And that's why I say sometimes get personal feedback, my friend. Get personal feedback. You know, for somebody to tell me 15 years ago, people don't tell you things because they're scared of you. That is deep. So you have to figure out how to not be scary. I'm still scary, but different reasons for that. But so having somebody else as what we call a coach or a mirror that helps you see yourself in a way that you didn't see yourself, and other people are not willing necessarily to tell that, you come to them and say, are you comfortable giving me feedback? Yes, I'm comfortable giving feedback. The feedback would be given, you know what you're so good at? 1, 2, 3. That's the feedback. Well, what can I do better? Well, you could do better with these 3 things that you got. This is perceived by people, and I'm not sure that's how you want to be seen, but this is how it's coming across. But if you want to make that any better, it may be good to do X, Y, Z based on this. What do you think? So seeking feedback among people on a one-on-one basis and people that are comfortable with each other is a good reflective process. And it's better than 360. 360, I think it's good, and I think it simplifies it for people. But sometimes we say things in 360 we don't want to say in person, and sometimes we don't put all we want to say. So humanizing that encounter and making sure that we're able to get that dialogue in a non-threatening fashion, and being willing to accept feedback, and the feedback being positive, appreciative first, then building on the strength of the person, being positive, appreciative, and then delivering additional things that they can do different, and for them to figure out how to do it, you know, but just tell them what their perceptions are. I think that will be a very healthy thing to do. So all these things, the mechanics, really can be anchored in those few steps there. Make sense? Yes, Bob?
One of the balances of great organizations is juggling great technical competence versus chemistry. I'm wondering, in your experience of recruitment, what your thoughts are on going for great technical competence and average chemistry, or great chemistry and average technical competence?
Wow, that's a tough question. Did you really want to open that can of worms here? Actually, but it's a very good question, and Bob knows we've had some conversations sometime. I weigh in both components quite heavily and almost equally. While I focus sometimes on technical competence being in training, but I have a certain level of expectation, and I know that people will grow and develop. But the personal side is what makes it blossom or not. So if somebody comes out of fellowship and says, you know what, I know everything, I don't need to learn anything, I don't need to change anything, I don't call for help, I know the answers to the questions, and the team's opinion doesn't matter as much, and if something doesn't happen the way they wanted, they get a temper tantrum in the operating room in the team, or every time there's a team discussion, they have this body language and they're fidgeting like there is a worm somewhere. That is not good. So the way I approach has always been is to have these conversations when people get hired and recruited, that there is a team conduct and a team behavior that we really have, and the reason why they want to come here because we on the outside world look successful, but the reality is they don't know what made it successful. And I always tell them the reason why this happened, we kept our eyes on the technical outcomes with undulations, but course corrections, innovations, new things to do, and grow it organically. We're not going to go explosively, but at the same time, build teams, build redundancies, and have a dynamic where people help each other, do their work, help each other grow, help them if they fall and trip and get back up again, and realize that if they want to go up in the leadership scale, they need to play well in the sandbox. Then they need to manage the team well. They need to figure out how to inspire and develop teams, and then how to innovate and build the leadership, which we call the level 5 leadership. So if people can't play in the sandbox, I think they're way low. Now, if they can't play in the sandbox, it doesn't mean that they don't get hired. We lay the groundwork and we talk. We work together. You know, we have our retreats, we have our one-on-ones, and sometimes it takes a couple of years. But I would say that if that is not managed and achieved and accomplished, that is probably a more common reason why people left our practice than the other one. So, did that answer it? Yes. Oh, yes, Gabe, sorry.
Yeah, in regards to the last question, I'd like to know, who's Bob calling average?
I think whoever is not in the room. Yeah, the definition of really average doesn't really exist per se, because we know that people finish training, they've been exposed to so many operations, this and that. So what really gets people started is their persona and their take on how they want to grow as individuals and surgeons. That's here what opens the conversation and the dialogue. And actually, Gabe knows that we've almost recruited a couple of people over the course of 5 years, and we changed the hiring decision based on fit. And that fit had to do with how will people interact with each other, to be comfortable conversing, be transparent, be candid, and also build on each other's strengths so they can build better technical competence. So that's why I think that building the team is not just hiring a technical person. That is what I call the ignition. The ignition. But to keep it going, it's the rest of the stuff. That's why when people talk about teams, there is this whole lecture on the technical competency of teams. And they tell you that all that stuff, the managerial component of the team, is really only to start the team and to get the first project going. But to sustain the team, manage the team, grow the team, it becomes all on the group EI related and the dynamics of that team, which is why I emphasize that part today. The other one is kind of boring, actually. Any other questions? But if there are any people who have any questions regarding the technical aspects of team, where, you know, goal setting, accountability, team dynamics, groupthink, how to prevent groupthink, and those efficiency measures, I'll be happy to chat with you about those particular things, because we did practice quite a few of these things actually in different settings and leadership settings and otherwise. Very good. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and a wonderful evening.